Carrie Geren Scoggins, Political Newsletter, Bible Prophecy Times Edition, End Times Prophecy News Update.
Hi, and welcome back to End Times Prophecy News Update. This is Carrie Geren Scoggins. Today I'd like to discuss the years of liberal propaganda. It's so that in the United States, our students, our youth, have been propagandized with the Democratic Party platform. We hear in other countries where children can quote the whole Quran, yet find out in the United States that our children know absolutely nothing about the King James Bible. They've gotten a lot of negative hearsay over the internet. That's false information. However, they can quote the whole Democratic Party platform on every issue. Many of us know, all through the 1990s, the one-liners the Democratic Party spread across the college campuses. Daily we heard, quote, "They're born gay." Yet there was never found a gay gene, and there still hasn't been found one to date, as stated by the American Medical Association in the DOMA hearings before the Federal Supreme Court. Yet this truth is never brought out for the college students and our youth to refute these same one-liners. Another common one-liner we all heard back during the 90s, those that are old enough to remember, the common saying, quote, "Communism in its truest form is good," and yet we never heard statements such as "Capitalism in its truest form is good." Never anything to refute those one-liners. Never going into any detail about the communist nations. Was communism in its truest form good? Many just remember the hundreds of millions put in concentration camps and killed for their political and religious beliefs due to state censorship laws and the inability to protest the state. Another common one-liner is that our media lies, and while this might be true, the rest of the sentence in this one-liner is, quote, "I know the truth because I listen to the BBC." Do we ever hear an opposing viewpoint to this? That the BBC is censored socialist media by a socialist government. Our founding fathers said our media was to be kept separate from our government. The corruption that is in our media, making part of that sentence truthful, comes from government intervention. We're to keep our media separate from the government so that we don't have media such as the BBC, propaganda from a socialist nation. Our media does lie. And generally, one can trace it back to several roots. Collusion with our federal government. When Obama wanted media moderators, it was to make sure that no one could oppose their viewpoints, which would have violated our First Amendment rights, and of course, went against what our founding fathers wanted of keeping the government out of our media. Another common one-liner many of us remember from back in the 1990s across the college campuses was that concerning abortion, that it wasn't really alive. It was just a, quote, "clump of cells." Now that technology has increased and we know differently, so much so that these same liberals who quoted this daily back through the 1990s do not want ultrasounds required for those getting an abortion. Because an ultrasound puts a face on the victim and stops this dehumanizing of the unborn child. We've heard lots about the dehumanizing by law enforcement in their training practices at shooting at what is supposed to represent American citizens. In some of those training practices, they were shooting at people dressed up in farmer clothes. And some of them were racial minorities at various times. And when the people complained, they said, "You're dehumanizing this segment of the population." Yet our government and schools are still passing along these Democrat one-liners about the unborn child being just a clump of cells, knowing that this has been refuted by technology, yet they're still being dehumanized. The more recent propaganda, and it's not just on the college campuses and across the internet, it's flooding our junior highs and high schools, getting into the minds of our youth, is that lies such as that Jesus supposedly supported homosexuality. Of course, knowing Jesus said he did not come to change the law, nor did he support any sinful lifestyle, and to accuse him of such would be blaspheming. Lies that we could reinterpret the scriptures, such as Romans chapter 1, and just change it to mean something else, such as homosexual prostitution, rather than the act of homosexuality itself. We never hear these lies refuted with the truth, such as the fact that Romans chapter 1 is describing one having been given over to a reprobate mind because they knew who God was and left him, or rejected him, reject the gospel of Christ and the Bible, and then went over into other religions, worshiping the creation rather than the Creator. And then God gave them over to a reprobate mind. It's the only sin spoken of in the whole Bible that is an outward sign of having been given over to a reprobate mind because they left God. The New Age liberalism that has crept into our nation has spread so many lies. And they've not left religion untouched. From the common lie that we're to, quote, coexist. And in order to coexist, that means we have to accept religious doctrine from other religions outside of Christianity. And of course, we've all heard the one-liner, Democrat liberal lie, that all paths lead to God. This lie has never been exposed publicly for having come from Nazi Germany. It was in the newspapers in Munich that the Christians and Jews were, quote, arrogant for believing that they had the only path to God. And of course, the New Age movement in Nazi Germany brought in all forms of paganism and worship of pagan gods, not just the Norse gods from their ancestors, but Middle Eastern religions such as Hinduism, anything that supported spiritual evolution and did not go against their New Age theosophy. Who in America is going to stand up and refute these lies to our youth before they take the minds of the nation, and in doing so, take their salvation as well? Just a thought. Keep this in your prayers. This has been another episode of End Times Prophecy News Update. Carrie Geren Scoggins.
been another edition of Carrie Geren Scoggins Political Newsletter Bible Prophecy Times Edition, End Times Prophecy News Update.